Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Transformers Devastation Magnus Difficulty walkthrough. This is Chapter 1, Part 1. It is the Steel City. Or the City of Steel, sorry. So this difficulty, it says for players who think they're good at the game and want to be proven wrong, which I think is a really interesting concept for a description for the difficulty. And it has to be said, the jump between Commander and this difficulty is incredibly high. You're going to notice immediately at the beginning that it's a little bit different than what you might have already played. And it came as a surprise to me that there's a difficulty after this, because I thought this was the hardest difficulty, but it turns out there's one after this, and it's all based off of the statistics of how the RPG elements of the game work, which I'm going to discuss later on. I might be able to address on it a little bit in this first video. But if you're worried about Prime difficulty, even though the only incentive to play it is if you like harder difficulty / you want to beat the game on all its modes, because there's only an achievement for going as high as Commander, and this difficulty is one above, and Prime is one above this one. But the main changes you're going to notice is the enemy speed. The enemies attack a hell of a lot faster than they did before. They are more aggressive, and you're going to be fighting enemies quite early on who you didn't fight previously. For instance, these enemies right now, the big guys with the hammers, very reminiscent of the hammer guy from Metal Gear Rising. These fellas turn up towards the end of the game, and this is the first fight of the game on this difficulty, and they've already turned up. So it gives you a little idea of just the modifications in enemy placements, and you're also seeing here just how much more aggressive they are. The biggest rule you're going to learn on this game is that for some reason Platinum decides to go against its very own design ethos, which is normally enemies do not attack you from off screen. Enemies will pacify slightly when the camera's not on them, and the moment the camera's on them they'll be aggressive again and they'll attack. This game doesn't work like that. This game works like Ninja Gaiden. Doesn't matter where your camera is, people are coming for you, and it makes it so much more difficult than it would ever normally be, because everything else about this game works perfectly. But when you get shit blasted from off screen by a move that is insanely fast, or somebody shoots a gun at you, it feels incredibly cheap. So do you notice how there's these little yellow arrows that are just around the outer edge of Optimus occasionally when I'm fighting? That's to tell you that there is an enemy close to you who might be thinking about attacking you. Also, if you see those red boxes around your character, it means that somebody is actively shooting at you, so you can use it to dodge and then divide and conquer. Additionally, you're also going to notice that the enemies get a lot more hyper armor, and their ability to interrupt your moves is very high. This is a fantastic enemy for it, the Seeker. These creatures are a nightmare. They attack so fast, they will literally 3-hit you and kill you if you let them get that first hit off, because you're not going to be used to how quick they are. And they will catch you out more often than anything else. It's the speed that's going to kill you the most. Everything else is entirely up to you, because my Optimus at this moment in time is not very high leveled. The weapons I'm using are the ones I inherited from Commando, so they are pretty good. But my base statistics are nothing impressive. And this is a game where you can grind, and you can farm, and you can replay other difficulties and challenge modes and things, get really good equipment, get really good gear, get really high stats, and it's going to make all these encounters much, much more easier, much more balanced, shall we say. And you can 100% do that for every difficulty for the entire game. It's entirely up to you. However, for the purposes of this walkthrough, and just to get this up as quick as I can, I chose to take it on as it came. So this walkthrough is going to be me playing as Optimus, and I'm going to be exploring a little bit, trying to pick things up, trying to see things that I missed on my first playthrough, because this is only my second run. And the next guide that's coming, which is going to be on Prime difficulty, I will be playing as Bumblebee, who's my favourite character, and it's going to be a little bit more streamlined, where I don't spend as much time destroying trees, picking up collectibles and shooting these strange machines. But Magnus difficulty, the jump is steep. You're going to notice it because you're going to die fast, you're going to fight new enemies, and it's the speed. The speed is the thing that's going to catch you off the most. Some of the big bosses now attack incredibly quickly, but the good news is, guys, it's just like anything else. You can adjust to it. There will come a point where the attacks don't seem so quick anymore because you're used to the speed and you can preemptively anticipate them. And when that moment happens, it is a bit of a watershed renaissance, and you're going to have a much easier time with the game. And the jump is so steep that I didn't think Prime was that bad at all. I think this difficulty is the true challenge, because it goes against the grain of how you've been playing. Prime just makes things even tougher, because there's this arbitrary level cap on the game, where on your first playthrough, I think you can get to about level 33 on your stats. On your second playthrough, you can get to about, I think it's level 64. And all these are governed by difficulty. I think it's Commander is the first tier, Magnus is the second tier, and then Prime allows you to go to 99 on all stats, because everything else is inflated. And what you'll notice, especially on that later difficulty, is it's a lot of just stat adjustments. You're already going to know what the game's about because you've played it, and you've played it on this difficulty, which is as fast as it's going to get. So it's just a case of the enemies will take more damage, they will deal more damage, and there might be added variables, which I'll discuss in that walkthrough because we're not there yet. But the first thing you're going to notice is we're fighting in Insecticons, which is incredibly early on, and these enemies, these kind of stag beetle creatures, they have this tendency to splash this pink goo everywhere. It's a little bit like Ghostbusters 2, only it's incredibly dangerous. And if they splash you with it, it doesn't do damage, but it will stun you. And it's one of the most frustrating parts of the game. Combine that with the fact that these enemies are incredibly fast, there's tons of them, and they attack you from off screen. This early fight right now is one of the most dangerous in the game. And the move that you're seeing me do just then is after the standard combo, you go into the vehicle attack. There's a pause between the vehicle attack where you can trigger another move. I'm choosing to go into my gun, shoot my gun, and then that's prompting another vehicle attack. If you're a complete neophyte when it comes to this game, the best thing to explain would be, if you've ever played Bayonetta, whenever you would normally do a Wicked Weave attack, where Bayonetta attacks with her hair, on this game you have that flash and that iconic noise telling you that you can do a transformation attack into a vehicle. And that's pretty much how the combos work. And then once you've done the vehicle attack, you can then follow up how you want to, with a chance of prompting another vehicle attack. This will all be dictated by what you choose to do and what move you choose to do. And a couple of things to bear in mind. The vehicle attack that you get will depend on what combo you do. So you'll notice the one I'm doing here is giving me the direct thrust into the enemies. And that's because I'm doing it off the spin attack, which... There are a couple of moves on this game that you can purchase quite early on. One of them is the spin attack. One of them is essentially the Tatsuzanko, which is back, forward, and Y, and you will do a palm thrust that can sometimes prompt a vehicle attack. However, it can be blocked, so it doesn't always do it. But there are a few different moves that will lead into it if they hit sweet. Because occasionally it just doesn't work, because it doesn't trigger it. But as a rule of thumbs, the vehicle attack, one of them can launch and knock them into the air. One of them can do an aerial down smash. One of them can do this circuitous, like, semicircle motion. And then the other ones are just the ones you see me do a lot. And the button presses will change depending on what weapon you're using. For a lot of this walkthrough, as Optimus, I'm going to be using this sword, which is a very good weapon, because it has this after image, like, laser slash that it does, where it cuts the air in front of your swipe, so it gives you a lot of range, which is incredibly powerful. But you're going to notice, you have to hit these bosses a lot. And if Devastator hits me, he's going to take 99% of my life off. Pretty much close to that. So you have to be on your toes. But there's this disconnect with this game. Watch out for the kick, it's a slower evade, but if you hit his leg afterwards, he'll fall down. If you knock him down 3 times, you'll get an achievement for doing so. And another thing worth noting here is, if you hit him in the face, it does extra damage. I think this boss is a piece of shit, personally. Because the premise is to attack his head. It even gives you these platforms that raise from the ground so that you can get to his head, and you can double jump and attack his head that way. But it's just not consistent in giving you a fast way of damaging the boss. So a lot of the times, it feels like you're just banging your head against a brick wall. And you'll notice I spend more time attacking his ankles, because it's just not worth the effort of trying to get into position only to take a cheap hit. Because it's very hectic, there's a lot happening on screen, and you have to focus on when the next hit comes. And these attacks, they come way faster than they did on hard, so you need to be aware of that. But the disconnect that I'm mentioning is watch my sword hits, and then watch my vehicle attacks. So my sword slashes do more than my vehicle hits. They do more than my overdrive move, which is a really nice addition, but it's pretty superfluous and pretty disappointing, I think. So, one of the things you can do to try and make this make more sense is to use pieces of tech that boost certain parameters. For instance, there's a parry in this game, but it's not a good parry because the damage is less than a standard attack, but the timing is way stricter. So you have to ask the question, outside of style and mixing up the combat, why would you ever prioritize precise timing over something that anybody can do effortlessly? You would never do that, unless you use this equipment to boost your reversal damage, and even then, best case scenario, you might be able to put 4 chips on that give you plus 30% reversal damage, and you're still not going to do as much as you would from a full combo, and you've done all that effort to get it. And whereas it's not the strictest of parries, it's still skillful, and it's a big shame that the pay is not worth the effort it takes to do. And I think that's kind of frustrating. And it's similar with a few of the functions like that, like the vehicle attacks. A lot of the combos lead into vehicle attacks, and the vehicle attack is essentially a way of launching, it's a way of crowd controlling, and it's a way of, just mixing up what you're doing and putting your enemy into a vulnerable position. But the problem with it is, unless you spec towards them, or unless your stats are really high, your vehicle attacks don't do that much damage. And later on in this walkthrough, and in the Prime walkthrough, it's magnified amazingly because I get a much better weapon. But I do more damage with my sword hits than I do the vehicle hits, and all the vehicle hits do is delay my combo and waste time when I could be hitting them with a weapon that works. And I came across this strategy of doing a combo up to a flash, and instead of pressing the transform, jump cancelling. Just press jump and then attack. And you will negate the slow motion, and you'll go back into a hit, and you'll capitalise on the damage. And it's not fancy to watch. It might not be a way you want to play, but it's goddamn effective. Because if you have something that's doing 3 times the damage, why would you ever do the other thing? And I think that's where the disconnect is. And it might be because of my inexperience with the game, and it might be just with the overly inflated statistical increments of the harder difficulties, but it comes off as feeling a little bit spongy. And this is kind of annoying. I didn't have any problems with this game until I started recording it, and then every so often there's enemies that end up going to other parts of the city where I can't hit them, and I can't actually get to them just yet, so it means I have to do silly shit like this, which is a little frustrating. But if you're having problems with the game, if you're finding it tough, if you're finding it that you're not doing enough damage, it's par for the course, it seems. It seems to be a game that's designed around you replaying it and coming back with better loot, more upgrades and better stats. And you really do see the difference when you get these better weapons. It's kind of crazy. And it kind of exacerbates one of the problems with the combat, which is, of course, the vehicle attacks and the more skillful and intensive moves you can do just don't give you the right amount of payoff unless you spec'd correctly. And another great example of this that you're going to see is the gun. The gun is, all you have to do is press one button and then press another button to shoot. It's easy to do, and you can link it in between combos. The gun does more damage than the vehicle attacks. It does sometimes more damage than the overdrive. Like, how can an entire bar that you fill that gives you a special move where you're completely invincible and you do a super awesome looking thing do less damage than a gun that you can do at any time and you can refill? Like, there's so many weird things. And it's the same with the ultimate attack. On the hood, on the top left, do you see that picture of the Transformers logo and that bar that's kind of 2/3 full? Once that gets filled, if you push both the analogs, you will do an ultimate attack. As Optimus Prime, he punches the ground, it does this big explosion, and it hurts, people who are close enough, and it does decent enough damage. If you have a really strong weapon, but your stats aren't too great, your ultimate attack won't do as much damage as you can do from a standard combo. And I think there's just this lack of truly understanding the effect of RPG mechanics that I think damages this game in some ways. I don't think it's necessarily, bad enough to stop people playing. I just think it's going to leave people feeling a little bit confused, because it did me. Because the combat's really fun. It's really, really fun. There's a couple of moments where the spawns are a little stupid. Like just then, if you drive too far to the left, you'll despawn the claw. and then you have to trigger it again. And there's a few instances where you can just make enemies disappear for no real reason. It's really annoying. But, like, it's 60 frames per second all the time. It almost never wavers. It feels beautiful. It's incredibly fast. It's pretty. It's responsive. Like, it's an absolute joy to play if you like these kind of character-driven action games. I think it's probably my favourite game this year, just because of how much fun it is to play from a feeling perspective. Like, I'm going to make a bold statement now, I like this more than Bayonetta 2. Does that mean that Bayonetta 2 was in any way a bad game? No. It's just, it was more of the same, only with inferior mechanics for me. Like, Bayonetta 1 is one of my all-time favourite games. I think that did this genre the best it'll ever be done. I don't think you can top it. I think Bayo 2 did a lot of really cool things, but it almost casualised certain elements to make it appeal to a wider audience, and I didn't like a lot of those changes, and they designed the game around them. A la that super fuck you Umbran move that made every enemy feel like you had to punch them for 10 minutes longer than you should have. And then you played as Rosa and the game made sense again, but never mind, this is not that discussion. Like, this game just, because it's new, but it's familiar, I'm just in love with it. Absolutely in love with it. Is it short? Hell yes. Does it have problems? Hell yes. Is some of the level design pretty unimaginative? Definitely. But when it feels so good, that's all I need. And when they've got this loot system, and like all these RPG elements that they do have an effect on the balance of the game, but they also give me an opportunity to just keep playing it for the sake of playing it, and I love that. But this is Megatron, and I'm showing him what can be done if you know how to chain moves together, which is incredibly dangerous against launched opponents. And as you can see, no damage, A rank, and there is an achievement for no damaging that fight, I think, so you can be working towards that if you don't have it. Tips on him: you have to break his shield with a rush attack, so wait for your vehicle to spew fire and then press attack to get through his shield. Just be aware of enemies can sometimes break through your combo and attack you. It's not as prevalent on this difficulty as it is on Prime, but if you don't like hyper armor and you don't like enemies just tanking hits and then hitting through them, this game's going to really fuck you off until you get used to it. But that is a really fun fight, and we're going to do the little objective here that gives us a nice loot drop. And then you break it, you see what you get, and hopefully you get something good. Weapons-wise, all of them are effective. Pick the one you like. I personally think faster weapons are better because I cannot stand long weapons. Any weapon where I spend more time interrupting the swing because I need to dodge to stay alive is a weapon I can't use. So the faster the better. That's why I've really gravitated towards Bumblebee. Bumblebee's incredibly weak, and he doesn't have the high strength, so his hits don't really mean much, but he can move fast, and he can do pretty much double the vehicle attacks in any given situation, so you can put it on some real pain on some enemies if you know how to do it. And I'm trying to think if I can like convey some interesting ways of thinking with the game. I'm going to do a separate video on how to parry because it took me a while to figure out what the game wanted. It's a little bit finicky like that, but a couple of general tips. You want to have one elemental weapon just in case, because I get the feeling that because there are elemental weapons, certain enemies will be weak against them, but right now I just don't know which ones are. So it always feels good to swap between weapons to see what's doing the most damage, to understand your enemy a little bit better. And if anything else, it's a little bit of diversity. Additionally, you want two different situational guns. I like to carry a big fuck you gun and a shotgun. The shotgun, unfortunately for me, drop-wise, has been really rare. I've not been able to get one that was really powerful because I love mixing it into the combos because it's a damage dealer, it's quick, and I can combo out of it. The big damage dealer I found that worked the best is probably the sniper rifle. Sniper rifles work really, really good. I haven't found a rocket launcher that I like yet. I want the Buster rifle from Gundam Wing. That is all I want. I want one gun where I shoot and shit dies and it's a big old dirty laser beam and it's just god tier. But I just don't think it exists, so I'm going to keep searching for it until it gets to that point. But this gun right there, it's Megatron's gun, sorry, but it has a mandatory shield and it's super slow, and I hate how the shield looks and I hate how slow it is. I really wish it was better. But you'll notice I'm using electrical circular cutters. I've changed my weapon up to diversify a little bit as I get attacked by the Insecticon there. These enemies are incredibly dangerous. because they swarm you, they have really fast attacks, and everything attacks off screen. There's the ultimate attack. Ultimate attack gives you complete immunity and it will cancel animations, but just bear in mind every so often there is input problems where it doesn't come out. It's very similar to the overdrive move. The amount of times I've pressed the left trigger to activate an overdrive move, because that's what my controls are, and it just didn't work and I got punched. I had a full bar, there's no reason for it not to work. The only thing I can think of is I was in an animation where it wouldn't trigger. Like, do you know when a game begins and you can't pause it because you have to wait until the game lets you pause it? A little bit like that. But the overdrives, you can use a lot of technology to boost them so that it regenerates quicker and so that it does more damage. I don't find them to be all that effective, and I think design-wise they're a little bit boring. There's nothing stand out about them. They could have been really interesting and awesome, like the torture attacks from Bayonetta, but I just don't think they tried. Optimus turns into the van and he does like a sweep, and it's cool the first few times you see it, but it doesn't do very much damage. I haven't found a way to make it do anything special. Like, if it does something extra cool that I don't know about, please feel free to educate me, but I just don't really see it. Bumblebee lets you get behind people, which is really good at cancelling animations on armour-heavy enemies, but the damage that you do when you do the back attack is so pitiful, it's not worth doing. Like, if you have max stats, it might be great, but if you don't, it's a joke. It's a complete utter joke. It looks really effeminate as well. Grimlock, I can't remember what that dude does when you press the trigger. He might breathe fire or something like that. I've not really played with him, I hated him. Absolutely despised that character when I first picked him up. What do those other guys do? There's the one with the gun. I do apologise about not knowing the Transformers names. I haven't watched Transformers since I was a kid, and I just don't remember any of them. I just remember really liking them and really liking the song. But the left trigger to do the bar move, I think, is a missed opportunity. It's still fun every so often, and it does work, but it just could have been so much cooler. You could have had moves to buy that would replace it, and they could have gone through different tiers of usefulness and damage, and they just kind of don't. The ultimate attacks suffer the same thing. All of the ultimate attacks are some kind of, lacking imagination animation that kills things for you. Which is all good and well, but there needed to be more. It could have been so much better. The game does have quick-time events, but they're very rare, and sometimes you just don't notice that they're happening. A really good example is when you do the aerial car move where you bang down on people. If you don't do any follow-up combo then, and instead if you press B, you'll get on top of them and you'll start punching them in the face, which is a really, really useful move actually, but sometimes it doesn't trigger it, other times it does. It's kind of like the punish attacks from Bayonetta, if you remember them. But you'll notice that the damage you take is pretty serious stuff. On Prime it's way higher, obviously. It's close to 1 to 2 shot kills almost all the time. But it's not a problem because the game is practically the same. The items. So I should really talk about the items. This game affords you so many items. You get items that increase your damage, you get items that increase your defense, you get items that increase your drop discovery, you get items that refill your life automatically, which I absolutely despise. If you want a tip from me to get better, sell every single rejuvenating item that the game gives you. You're not going to get any better if every time you die you get an instant free heal, because you're not going to learn what you did wrong, you're not going to learn to improve, and you're not going to get any better. Also, if you do what I mentioned by selling them all, you have a ton of money all the time to do good things with, and there's a lot of really cool things to do in this game, through the synthesis, through upgrading statistics, making new tech, all that kind of fun stuff. Ooh, anything purple can only be broken with a speed boost or with the rush attack, so bear that in mind. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, that's why I'm doing it. And of course, watch out for the jizz. The pink jizz of doom does so much damage. But that's something that really, really bugs me. Anybody who played Bayonetta will know that in that game, if you press right trigger twice, you turn into a panther. If you press right trigger twice again, you come out of being a panther. This is so clever in so many ways, because not only does it enable you to quickly get into panther mode whenever you want, but it also stops bad players from spamming evade. You cannot spam evade on Bayonetta without being punished. Not only does the game have a cooldown after you do, I think, is it 5 evades with Bayonetta, but you'll just turn into the panther and end up getting trapped. Obviously, every so often the iframes will get you through, but for the most, you cannot just cheese evade. This game works differently, and it's inferior in every conceivable way. To transform, you have to hold the right trigger. And you might think, well, that doesn't sound too bad. And it isn't, for the most. However, to get out of it is a nuisance, because once again you have to hold the right trigger, and while you're holding the right trigger, you can't evade, which puts you in a vulnerable position. There are two other ways to get out of the vehicle. You can double jump, and you'll come out, or you can attack. There's no lock-on the game, to my knowledge. I haven't checked the online manual, because when I went to the instruction manual on the menu, it gave me a link to some fucking Activision website, and it wouldn't open, because the Xbox One's a piece of shit. So I didn't check that, but if there is a lock-on, it's probably a lifesaver, because the amount of times where you will get just bummed by things off-screen, because it did a really fast jet away and then came back and slapped you, is too damn high. But the thing that exacerbates the problem with the transforming mechanic and how it just doesn't feel as quick and as responsive as it could do, as quick and as responsive as Panther Mode did in Bayonetta, is there is an aerial move in this game where you come down as the car and you slam into the ground. It's essentially the tombstone move from the Wonderful 101. In the Wonderful 101, to do that move, I think you had to hold the trigger. That's all you had to do. And it worked beautifully. On this game, if you're not neutral on the analog when you do it, you will not do that move. So in the air, there'll be times where you try and do the slam to come down, and you'll end up transforming into the car and just carrying on. Or you'll end up doing nothing, or doing an evade, and still being in the car. And there are moments where you have to do it quite quickly, where you will actively get punished because it doesn't work as well as it could. And I know that this is super meta, super high nuance type stuff that I'm critiquing here, but it's important. On Prime difficulty, enemies can kill you in 1 to 2 hits. If that move is the difference between living and dying, that's important. And for a developer that puts such a high emphasis on execution and fidelity and responsiveness, it's not good enough. And I have no idea why it works that way, because they've done it better before. And it's a big shame. But this is Megatron again. This is really funny. If you hit him in the vehicle, he will fall out of it, and then you can combo his face off. The problem is, if you kill him, well, you can't kill him technically, because his life never goes fully down. But it just seems pointless. Why can I beat him up so much here, yet it doesn't end the fight and let me carry on in my own leisure? And then when we get to the next section, which is a mandatory fight, he has full life again. So you don't actually have to fight him here. You can just take your time and let him keep ahead of you. But I like to fight him because it's just more entertaining, I guess. But you might think, because of the tangent that I was just on, that I have something against this game, because a lot of people seem to perceive when you give criticism or areas that can be improved, they think it's just negative. They think it's just somebody either bitching or complaining or just being overly critical, and it's never intended to be that. Oh, by the way, this is a really interesting loop that can sometimes work. The move I'm doing after that vehicle attack is the back forward Y. If it lands, it's a guaranteed vehicle attack, and there are times where you can catch people after a vehicle attack and loop it. And it does really good damage too. You can even go into your gun, then do that move, and then vehicle attack, because both moves have a chance to give you the vehicle counter. And I've been experimenting with various features of the game, because I was wondering if knockback prompted vehicle hits, because there's a statistic where you can have a higher chance to knock people back. And if you, in theory, if you get really high knockback on a weapon, that means that almost every hit can turn into a vehicle move, which can then propagate more vehicle moves, and you can do crazy big combos. But the funny part is, you don't get rewarded on this game for doing crazy combos. You get rewarded for doing pretty banal things. And there are times where you can do the sickest looking combo, take no damage, get the maximum speed bonus, and still get an S rank instead of an SS rank because you just didn't do enough tick boxes. So I think scoring this game is going to be very difficult, and it's going to force you to play in a very clinical manner, which is a little bit disappointing. And it could be completely false, I might be completely wrong, but so far, the times when I've been trying to get good ranks, I've got not good ranks, and the times when I've thought I played really sloppy, I got SS ranks. So it seems really, really weird at the moment, but I look forward to figuring it out and really getting stuck in, because I love this game. But here's Megatron. You have to use a rush attack to break his shield. He tries to push you away. Things to watch out here. He recovers from combos mid-combo sometimes, and will immediately go into armor and attack you. It can be really disheartening if you're not used to how quick this difficulty is. But for the most, do whatever bread and butter combo you've got, link it into moves that knock him over, put him into stun states, and then capitalise. And just be quick on them evades. The first thing you need to do on this game is buy all the moves, because they're really cheap, money means nothing, and you're going to use almost all of them. The only move I don't use that much is the knock into the air move when you press Y and B at the same time, because the only real effective way I've found to follow it is to shoot people and then vehicle attack. Like, air comboing on this game is not the most intuitive thing. There are moves that do it really well, but I just haven't quite figured out the best, routine of moves to do to keep them in the air. But, like, this is still day one gameplay, guys. This is literally recorded the first day I owned the game, so we're still learning, we're still figuring things out. And just be careful of the guns. The gunfire on this game is really fast. It happens from off screen, it happens when you're not expecting it, and a lot of your cheap deaths, or your cheap rank runs, or your cheap no damage runs, whatever you're trying to do, are going to get ruined by a really fast animation and a projectile, because that's pretty much what happens. I'm almost certain that this fight will give you an achievement or trophy if you do it without damage, and it's not that bad to do, because the checkpoints for the most are really good. That move right there, you can continue it into the afterburner move, and then you can come back on yourself into a rush attack and then combo afterwards, but I just didn't do it. But did you see? I didn't think that was a very good fight, and that was SS, and I didn't even get the time bonus. So strange. But that is the beginning of my walkthrough, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, you take care now.